Recording. I don't know. Good. Looks like it's recording. So,
Yeah.
Hello there, David. How are you, sir?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to this. You're the first volunteered victim for this session.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually quite honoured. I'm honoured, but at the same time, I'm actually really kind of scared because I don't know what you're going to ask me
Join
now.
the club. I don't mind talking sort of face to face and having a general chinwag, but to be recording this and try and do this as tidily as possible, we're just going to go with the flow. If the questions and the answers don't make sense, we won't worry about it.
Yeah, cut those out later.
Yeah, well, if I can cut it. Now, I've had some questions from various people, which are mostly what I would have asked myself. What I would like to ask you is, when did you first realise that you could write music that could be performed by other people?
Yeah, when I find out the answer to that, I'll let you know. No, I didn't really start writing until quite late. I must have been late teens before I even started attempting to write music down. I was inspired actually by a friend, Dean Jones, who was our.
I've never heard of him.
Yeah, I know, he's a little known composer.
Yeah.
He was the deputy youth band leader in our division, and I think it was around about the time that he had Faithful God was being published. And I remember he would bring music along to youth band practices and try them through the band. And I think it was more of a case of, I know someone that writes some music, I wouldn't mind having a go at that myself. And gradually just kind of started trying to, arrange things. And it started off as simple as taking a piano score, for example, and just scoring it out for a band to play, with very little actual arrangement happening at all. And gradually, I think it was over time that it was Dean that said to me, do you know what, you're sending me a few things to look at here. And he forwarded me on to Andrew Blythe, and they just really kind of developed me and then kind of worked. I was very fortunate to go and sit with Ken Downey and other composers at the time, RSA. I remember sitting with him, Stedman, once, and just being fascinated as he stared for a full band score, just going, interesting. I had no idea what he was looking at, really. The man, just a genius to sit there at a score and hears the whole thing. But I can't pinpoint a point where I actually realised that I could do it. I think it was just something that's just gradually developed over time. That and I wouldn't even say that I'm top of the game yet. I still produce some stuff where I kind of sit there and think, that was really amateur, and I'm still learning and I'm still developing. So I just keep trying. I keep sending music in for publication. I keep giving things to Carl Saunders for the Household Troops Band to play. When it's a good thing, they use it, they play it, they record it, some things get published. I'm still learning. So I'd never even say that I am at a point where I realise I'm able to do it. I'm, I still feel like I'm not at that level yet.
Yeah. First question, what I've got is, what was the first piece of music you wrote?
First piece of music I wrote, I actually can't remember. I think. I
was looking at the.
No, I mean, as far as the first piece of music I had published is different from the first piece of music I wrote. So I had a few things that I'd written and trialed, and they never went anywhere because obviously all still in primitive kind of form. The first piece of music I ever had published was actually In the Tomb So Cold, which was published as part of the scripture-based songs. That was the very first thing that I ever had published back in 2000.
Graham Kendrick, 2005.
That's right, yeah. 2005-ish, yeah. And then the following year, the first band piece, A Christmas Mambo.
Yeah.
But before that, I think it was just lots of trial and error stuff, to be honest.
Another question. How did your composition start? Piano, computer, manuscript, back of a newspaper? When you get the idea, when you get the...
Actually, I've gone through different stages. When I first started writing, it started with, I took maybe a songster piece, for example, and I had a piano part already scored out for me and I would just play with it. I go through stages of different things. So sometimes I will sit at the computer and I will just start putting things in. I would sit at the piano sometimes and I would have ideas that would just come to me as I sit and busk. But in more recent times, actually, and this is strange, most ideas just come to me while I'm walking around or things. Recently I used to work in London, so in my little commute walking backwards between St Pancras and central London, I would just have some little motifs that would go into my head. And the mobile phone is a fantastic thing because I sit there, I've got so many voice recordings of me just singing an idea, and so I didn't forget what it was.
Yeah.
And then later on I'll go back to it and I'll just try to hear it and try to pick it out, and then maybe I'll put that melody line into the computer, and then I will sit at the keyboard and work out what goes with that melody line. So I go through lots of different things, but I suppose that's probably the most common one that I do right now.
I'll get to this one. What do you consider is success for one of your pieces? Another inputted question.
Success, somebody wants to use it. I don't care whether that's publication or just a band wants to play it. I don't write music because I want everything to be published, and I don't write music just to make me feel good or because it gives me my name on the corner of a page. I write it because I want it to be used. I want it to be of blessing, and I want people to kind of get something from the music, from the hard work that I've put into putting it onto a page and producing the piece. I want other people to kind of benefit from that. So for me, if anybody wants to play it and use it and they like it, and even better, when I get messages from people I've never even met to say, we used your piece on Sunday, or we played it in band practice, and I really liked it. That's success for me. I will always remember, I had a random Facebook message from a man that goes to, I believe he's at Cardiff Canton, and I'd never met him before. And I'd written a flugelhorn solo, and it's never been published or recorded or anything, but I gave it to Carl Saunders, the bandmaster there, to play through. And obviously they used it. It was based around the vocal song, Teach Me, O Lord. I just got a random message from this man to say, we used that piece at I think it was his grandson's dedication, and it really blessed him. And I just wow, when somebody makes an effort to go and tell you something like that, that's the reward for me. That's why I do it.
Another question, I think this is one of Mr. Jones's questions. How important is originality to you? When you say you can do songs to song or arrange hymn tunes, so how do you try and get that with the Edmonds stamp on it?
Yeah, I think originality is actually important. I would hate to be labelled as somebody that copies anybody else, and likewise, I would hate that other people would do the same to me. I think I appreciate that music is and the creative kind of things. You're always constantly being inspired by other things that you've heard, and I think it was in the New York staff band composers meeting that they had the other week that Peter Graham thinks that you're always a product of everything you've heard, and I suppose that's very true. So for me, if I listen to a piece of music and I go, hang on a minute, that's somebody else's, I change it. I really, really want it to be my own. I think it's really important that I try to be original and try to think differently. And I think the only way that that it comes across like that, and it comes across with my stance on things, is by the way that I go through that process of something. I hear an idea in my head, and then I'll record it down, and then I'll develop it slowly. I don't often rush into a piece and just put out whatever. I think it's important that it's unique, it's different, and it's not what everybody else is doing.
Do you have a kind of a brainwash mode? So you sit there and you've got to do a meditation or an arrangement, and you've had, I don't know, Radio 1 in your brain. How do you clean your process out so you can arrive with that blank sense, say, I've got all this stuff that's been milling around, I need to clean that out and approach it with a clean slate?
Yeah, in fairness, the recording things actually help. So when I actually have an idea in my head at its primitive point, I record it straight away. It basically means that I can go off and listen to other things, get influenced by loads of other kind of styles of music, and have, you know, other pieces that just sit on my mind. But when I need to now go back to the piece that I'm writing, I can now go back to that recording, and I can re-switch my mind back to what I was originally thinking when I first put it down. It doesn't just become an idea. So I won't just put down a title and an idea and just talk through what piece I want to use. I will actually sing ideas and sing melody lines and sing to myself, what's the bass line going to do, and what's, you know, that way I keep it to the truth, you know, true what I wanted it to be, rather than it going off on some sort of tangent or being too influenced by other things. I think lockdown, as we're currently all experiencing now, has also had a little bit of a knock on, because if I go out for a walk in the evening, it's nice. I don't take headphones with me. I don't listen to any other music. I'll just go for a walk, just me. Walk around the block in the evening. It's really quiet. It's going dark, and it's a nice place to just clear your mind and start fresh, I think, and that's always very beneficial as well.
Another question: what genres of music have you written for?
Genres, as in, so like.
Yeah, I mean, what other genres have you written music for? But I mean, I know you've got swing and hymn tune in Christmas. You've got a cornet solo.
Yeah. Oh dear me. I've done a few things, to be honest, but I couldn't actually pin down, because I don't really catalogue what I've done, to be honest. I've done a lot. Yeah, you're right. I've done a lot of Christmas stuff. I've done a few swing pieces. A lot of things I write because somebody wants something specific. So I've written musicals. I've done arrangements for songs from the musicals, which have been featured on the Household Troop CDs. I've written solos for people specifically. A singing company. I've done a lot of sing company stuff as well. So there's original kind of ideas and original music coming there. But
does it help to have a deadline for a composition rather than allowing your brain to go free range?
That's actually a very good question.
Or both things?
Yeah, I like to have a deadline, and I like to have an idea, but yeah, it can backfire on you. I think there's two ways that I work. One of them is I will just have an idea that will pop into my mind, and I'll record it down, and I will gradually over time build it up and make it into something. You know, I've got pieces of music that have taken me well over a year to complete, because it's just, you know, just little bits at a time. The ideas gradually come. Sometimes, for example, if I've been asked to write a specific piece of music, the one that comes to mind at the moment, I wrote a euphonium solo for the Troops Musicals 2 CD. I was told in November, just after the Lord Mayor show, that Carl wanted a euphonium solo. And it had to, you know, obviously link in with the theme of musicals, and we were recording in the first week of January. You know, you've got a deadline, and you've got a theme, and that's key. It's all well and good having a deadline with no theme, that your mind could go anywhere. If I've got a deadline, it's always nice to have an idea of what the person wants as well. So if I'm writing for someone and they need it by a certain time, if they've given me an idea as to the kind of melodies that they want to include, or the style that they like, or if there's a theme to the piece of music, that guides my mind better. So I do like having a deadline. I do like having a project, because actually it gives me something to focus on. And otherwise it's just sort of free reign and see what happens. And that's never necessarily a good thing.
Yeah. When a new piece is being published, if you've attended a performance of your music as it's written, can you remember the first time that you heard a band play sort of a piece of published music with your name on it, and you were there to witness it?
Yeah, well, in fairness, there's two ways of looking at this. My core band have played some of my published music, so it'll be one of those things where the core band will see the music
I don't know why
You know,
what is your core band?
Dunstable. I go to Dunstable
Yeah.
Core.
Yeah.
And so at the moment we're a fairly small band. You know, I think on average, if you've got everybody there, we're looking at around about 14, 15 people.
I know some calls
But
it that.
well, I know, appreciate that. That's only when we've got everybody.
Yeah.
But I don't make a big thing of telling everybody, oh, I've got another piece of music that's going to be published, or I've got a piece of music published. The first time my band know that I've got a piece of music published is when it goes on the stand, because it's just been delivered
Yeah.
and they try it through. And that fills me with dread. It really does. And I can't. It scares me because I'm in the room and they know that I've written it, and it could go one of two ways. They could play it just as I want it, but don't like it, or they could absolutely crucify the piece, and I'm sitting there thinking that was awful, and I didn't like listening to it. Yeah, that I always remember those. But beyond that point, really, um, I've sat and listened to a few bands play my music. I've heard fellowship bands play at divisional events a piece of music that I've had published, and obviously being part of the Household Troops band, they play my music with me there regularly. And in fairness, most of the time they're actually premiering the work and trialing it out for me for the first time. With them, I'm not worried because they've got such a group of class musicians that actually, if the band piece sounds naff, the chances are it's because I've written it naff. And so it's a fantastic opportunity to sort of see those kinks. So I've seen both ends of the scale of people playing my music.
Now, just as not, I fully know because I've seen it live, but there'll be people watching this video who may have to Google the Household Troops band. So, give a very brief sort of description of what the Household Troops band is for our non-UK viewers who may not know, and also how did you get involved with the Troops band?
Okay, so the Household Troops band is a Salvation Army band formed of musicians from all over the United Kingdom territory. They don't rehearse regularly, they get together and they do gigs. Originally from 1885, they were formed up just to literally be a band that went out and did open airs and marches and things like that. They were reformed in 1985 by Major John Mott. They've gone around and they've travelled all over the country and all over the world. And their main area really of speciality, I suppose, that makes them different from anybody else is their outdoor ministry. They would have done marching displays at the Royal Albert Hall. They do the Lord Mayor's show, so they're outside marching everywhere they go. And people will recognise them because they wear these white pith helmets.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily a well-known army band unless you've really kind of heard from them. But they are, in my opinion, and rightly so, equal to many of the top Salvation Army bands around the world. Got some fantastic players that have been part of that band, and I'm just privileged that I've had that opportunity. I got involved back in 2008, and I stepped in for the Lord Mayor's show, and basically just went and filled in where there were a load of people that couldn't make that. They're a band that really, that you get an awful lot of people that would depth for the band and just fill in where people are missing. And so I remember doing that. And then I stayed in touch with Major John Mott afterwards, and I just said, it was at the time I was starting to write a bit of music as well, and I said, look, can I send you some music? He was very happy for that. And then he said, we're missing a second cornet player for our recording in January. Are you free? Would you like to come along? So I did, and I've just been there since. You know, I've held up the bottom end of the cornet bench for 13 years. That's how I kind of got involved.
Another question for you from the list. What are the biggest lessons you have learned in your music writing experience?
Listen to advice, definitely. There are so many people that are just stubborn, aren't they? And I'm one of them. You have your way of doing things, and this is how I like to do it. And the amount of times I've been given advice about the way I should work out about my music. Ken Downey has been such a great support to me over the years, and I guarantee he gives me such praise. You know, it's fantastic to get such praise from from a man in at his level. But he will always tell me the same things about starting small, working at the piano, and then building it up. And sometimes I feel really impatient, and I don't like doing that. And I think you'll find that probably the best music that I've written, I've taken as advice. And the stuff that's not so good and needs revising a few times is because I've been impatient and I've just wanted to do it my way. So biggest lesson, listen to people that know, take on some advice, and be more patient about it.
Off topic a bit, when is the last time a piece of army music moved you, and what was it?
Oh, wow. In fairness, it's been quite a while since we've really listened to a proper good piece of army music, isn't it? All being on lockdown. I think for me, and probably for a lot of other people, the piece of music at the moment which gets me is a Prelude on Lavenam.
Yeah.
It's so nicely written, and it links to some beautiful words. It's one of those pieces that now it speaks for both band people and vocalists, you know, because it's a songster piece and people know it from that as well. I've heard it played by the ISB, I've played it with the corps band, I've played it with the troops band, and every time I hear it, it just makes me feel at peace. So for me at the moment, that's the piece. It doesn't matter when the last time I heard it is. Every time I hear it, it's just so nice at the moment.
Another question. I think I could sort of push these two into one. Who are your personal Salvation Army music heroes and why? And I think you've already alluded to this. If you could choose another Army composer as your personal mentor, who would it be and why? And you can be alive. They can be alive or no longer with us now. So,
okay,
your musical heroes and your mentors, they're the same thing or not?
They can be, I guess they can be. Yeah, I'm actually going to probably steer away from what a lot of people would answer to this. And this is a question that I think a lot of composers and army people get asked, and they always go to Les Condon and Wilf Heaton and RSA. But I didn't grow up with that in that sort of era. I didn't really get fully exposed to Salvation Army music until I was in my teens. Not in the same way. I grew up in the Salvation Army. I've been in the band, but I never really experienced outside of my corps until I was later on. So for me, I started going to music school, and actually, when I first started getting into Salvation Army music, the big name at the time was Peter Graham.
Yep.
And I suppose in my early kind of days, Peter Graham was a name that I would just kind of say, wow, he just writes so much good stuff. But actually, in recent years, my mind has actually changed. And for me, William Himes is my personal favourite of all the Salvation Army composers. And the reason being is that I just think he demonstrates in his music just how clever, really, he is. He is such a nice and humble man. And he has produced some amazing stuff, which is in some cases really out of the box. From things like his Bolero, I Have Decided to Follow Jesus, to Jericho, where he suddenly has, you know, voiceovers and things, this narrative, to the chief musician, to have the band singing and rhythmic speaking as part of a band piece. It's just so different and it's so clever. And the reason that I'd like him, and also I would probably love to spend time with him as being a bit of a mentor for me, is because I find that what he does so well, and I would love to be able to do, and I try to do in my own music, is find two pieces of music and blend them together. So pieces like Sole Deo Gloria, pieces like All That I Am, and even some of his more recent Unity series stuff as well. He has melody 1, melody to, and then both of them at exactly the same time playing. And I think it's so clever. And I would love to be able to just pick two pieces of music and just make them work. I try to do that when I write my own music. I try to think of a second piece and how I can link them together. But to me, William Himes is just amazing at that. And so for me, he's you know, my favourite, and I would love to spend some time being mentored by him, definitely.
You spoke about people like Ken Downey, a bit like Stephen Allen. Are there any people on this side of the pond that you've had a lot of time with and you've been able to talk music and composition and sort of had a problem, or you wanted to sort of speak to someone who's been doing it for a lot of time?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very fortunate over here. I've had an awful lot of support through music editorial through the years I've been writing. Andrew Blythe has been fantastic and offered some great feedback to me. But yeah, Ken Downey is probably the person that I've spoke to the most. I've sat with him on many occasions looking at my own scores, whether it be through the composer seminars that the Army have run, or just going into THQ and sitting with him, or even in the last couple of weeks via a FaceTime meeting where we would sit and he would play at his piano my music and we'd have that kind of interaction. But I'm really fortunate. I've got a nice network of Salvation Army composer friends within the UK. And I think really there's quite a few that I could go to and say, could you look at this for me? Could you give me some advice? I'm very fortunate there, but Ken and Andrew are definitely the ones that I've spoke to the most.
Okay, I think we might have covered this, but is there a particular piece of published Edmonds music out there that you're really proud of, or you're kind of says, you know, that's one that really achieved what I was aiming for?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I don't have a huge plethora of music that's been published. I've got so much music that's been played. I've got music that's been recorded, but not huge amounts that have been published yet. I'm hoping on that one.
Include unpublished music in that. Doesn't have.
I could, yeah. Oh, well, I'll tell you what. Let me give you one of each then, because I was really pleased with a piece of music called "His Faithful Follower." It's been published in the Canadian Maple Leaf series, and it was written for a wedding. And it's one of those situations where they just say to me, "We'd like this tune, and we'd like you to write that for our wedding." And that was an honour. But when I looked at it and I started working on it, they gave me the title of the tune. By his hand he leadeth me.
Keep going. You can put some more light on in here. Carry on.
That's not a problem. Yeah, by his hand he leadeth me. And I looked at that and I thought, actually, there's two tunes here that could be used. And so actually I put them both together and used them both. And I was really pleased with that. And that was another piece that kind of got played a lot. And I was fortunate that it was used in a joint concert with the Canadian Staff Band, and it's gone down very well. In the States and in Canada, and people are playing it and being moved by that. So for a published piece of music, that to me is a highlight. But if I was to include all the music that I've written, and this one hasn't been published as yet, it's currently sitting in the Central Territory for consideration for the American Festival Series. And it was a piece of music that I wrote off the back when I was asked to write a new piece of music for the Household Troops to play, which had to be in the same sort of vein and light as His Faithful Follower, which was getting a lot of airtime. And that was a piece of music called Consecrated. And it was written for the band to play when they went to Old Orchard Beach in 2018. And just, again, it's one of those that features two tunes. It just really feels really good when I hear it back. It just sounds fantastic. And I really hope that it does get some use. At the moment, the only recording of it is on YouTube of the band playing it at Old Orchard Beach. It's not been put down onto a CD yet or anything. But I know that there's a couple of bands around the UK, and I think there's one or two in the States that have that music and have potentially been using that. For me, that is my favourite of all the music that I've written so far. That's up there with, you know, some of what I feel is my best work.
Just off the cuff thinking, what would you call your I mean, if you can, your breakout piece of music, published music? And someone says, this seems to, that's it, by that time. Because for me, I think I first heard of you with, I think it was Exalted. And then I heard I Love to Sing and Rejoice, and came from there. And
yeah, I would probably say, yeah, Unity series is the one for me. I've got more stuff published in the Unity series than anything else, which actually is probably a very good thing. There are so many bands that's what they rely on now. That it's all fantastic writing all these big pieces of music and having all these top bands play it, but actually, the stuff for the smaller band, the stuff for the average core now that's such an honor to be used in that sort of light. It's it's Christmas Mambo is the one that everyone kind of goes, oh, you wrote Christmas Mambo, I love that piece. For me, I will joke about it forever and ever, but for me, I will always be known as the man that wrote Christmas Mambo. And that was published in 2006, I think. It's been so long since that was produced.
Yeah, 2000.
But it's still there as something different that people use at Christmas. So yeah, that's my breakout piece.
How did that come to be written then? I mean, because it's not so many people sort of do a traditional In the Bleak Midwinter to have that kind of Christmas mambo.
Yeah, I know.
How did you get to a mambo for a Christmas piece?
I think the title came later and the idea came first. I was fortunate 2002, 2003 and 2004. I spent 5 weeks every year in Seattle playing Christmas carols, just sort of as a small ensemble. We went from here over to the States and spent some time playing Christmas music in Seattle and the Seattle area. And when you spend every day for 5 weeks playing Christmas carols, your mind starts thinking about how could you make this more fun and more entertaining. Yeah. I think that's kind of where the idea came from. It came more of a stylistic, how could this kind of go across, which then later on got penned down and then produced as Christmas Mambo. So yeah, that's kind of where that one came from, I think.
Okay. Now this is one of the I would say appendix questions, and I'll read it as it was given to me. What's the weirdest place you've heard of or you've seen your music being used?
Oh dear.
I'm not quite sure what weird is described as, but
I don't know that it would be classed as a weird place, but definitely the most different place. I had a piece of music which you'll know very well, Marvin. That's "Rejoice," which you've told me that you like.
Yeah, I do like.
That was performed in Disneyland, California. That was quite a little highlight. It was done on a 45-minute bandstand concert at about 10:30 in the morning with about 10 people standing around listening. That was different. I can't think genuinely that I've had anywhere that's weird. I don't know that I've really got enough music out there yet to fully kind of get some of these stories in place. But that's the best one so far.
Yeah, keep on writing. I can't remember who. I think this was another one of Dave's questions. What's the one piece that you wish you'd written?
Oh, do you know what? I never really thought of that, to be honest. I've got a lot of pieces of music that I like and I've really loved listening to. I don't think I'm ever in a position where I wish I'd written that. But I can stand in awe of a lot of music.
So what's yours?
Sorry?
I know what my favourite piece of Salvation Army music is. What's yours?
Yeah, for me, the biggest, the piece of music which I have loved listening to more than anything else over my years has actually been Renaissance, Peter Graham. I think that has got, and the whole piece is fantastic, but for me, the last section going into the end is just amazing. It's got so much good stuff going on there. So I suppose if I could stand there and say, do you know what, I wish I could write like that. That's a piece of music that I would highlight, I suppose.
Another question. Apart from music, although we are concentrating on your compositional skills, what are your other interests in life? When you have to put the music aside and spend time, what is in the Edmonds hobby list?
It's actually not a lot on it. I've got two things that really stand out. One of them is I'm a big fan of the American football, the NFL. I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan due to obviously all the time that I've spent in Seattle. And so I watch the NFL every season when it's round and go to those games when they come to London. And the other thing that actually I've got into and has only been in the last 12 months is fireworks. I was fortunate enough to be put onto a Category 3 fireworks training course last year, and I now run the firework displays at my wife's primary school every November. And this year I've actually registered to go on to Category 4, which is big professional stuff. I think it's just because it's creative and it's different. I like actually putting some music together and then designing the firework display to go with that music, and then just making big flashy banging lights, and it's fireworks in the NFL. But you couldn't have guessed that was coming, could you?
A couple of being a drummer, it's interesting to see you've done a lot of swing stuff, but I can't see any marches under your name. So is that something you've never been approached to do, a good old-fashioned army street march, or is that something you've got in the background, you just haven't got around to doing it?
No, it's kind of a mixture, to be honest. There's the fact that I've not really done a lot. I have written a couple of marches, but they've never really gone anywhere. And I think the reason is marches, although you'd think that they were really straightforward, I think if you asked a lot of composers, writing a good Salvation Army march is not easy. Yeah. And so they're either going to be good or they're going to be a bit naff. And so I had to go at a couple in my earlier writing days, and I think you'll probably find they're a bit naff. And I think as a result, I've sort of steered clear from them. And that's not to say that I wouldn't like to have another go, but I'll wait until a good idea comes first. But yeah, I'm not avoiding marches on purpose per se. I just don't think that they're my cup of tea at the moment. They're not something that I'm very good at writing for, and I need to develop on that a bit more.
What would you say your strong point in music composition was? A meditation or an arrangement? And if you had someone phone you up and say, "Can I have this?" You think, "You know what? I know I'm really good at that."
I wouldn't even necessarily say I have a strong point. I've done a few of different things, to be honest. Recently, I've been asked to write solos. I wouldn't even say that I'm very good at solos, because I really struggle to kind of think sometimes of being creative with the soloist. When I first started writing, and you highlighted things like Exalted and things like that, I actually quite liked some of those swingy, jazzy, big band pieces. And I will always remember Dan Robson, he's the principal cornet of the troops, turning around to me once in a concert saying, "Do you only ever write swing pieces?" And so since then, actually, I would say the strongest thing that I've written is more reflective music. I get to play with my chords and my chord progressions and my harmonies a bit better, which, I can't really embellish and enjoy as much when you're writing something that goes through a bit faster. I think probably that's my strength at the moment, is writing that softer, gentle, reflective, atmospheric style of writing.
Okay. So in the immediate future with this lockdown, what's on the compositional bench at the moment? Do you care to reveal any future ideas you're asked to do?
Yeah, actually, strangely enough, I decided last weekend that I was going to start writing, have an attempt at writing my first test piece. So I'm actually going to have a go at writing something more substantial, because I don't really do much substantial kind of writing, major work stuff. But one of the companies that published my work outside of the Salvation Army did say that they're looking for a test piece for a lower section, like a section 3, section 4 kind of test piece. And I had an idea in my head a few years back, and I figured with the lockdown, I'm going to start putting some of those ideas down onto paper and see what comes of it. It might be that I realise why I don't write many big pieces, and it gets scrapped quite quickly. But that's what I'm going to have a go at the moment. That's what I'm putting my efforts into. But on my phone, I have quite a lot of recordings. So gradually, bit by bit, I suppose the longer we're in, the more get ticked off the list, I guess.
For any sort of young composers who are just putting their first ideas down, you've gone beyond that. You've got published. What would be your advice to these, fledgling students who are just thinking about chord structure and melodies and where to go?
I mean, my instinct would be don't listen to me because I don't know enough yet. But I suppose the thing that I see a lot is people jumping in at the deep end. I see a lot of people that just, trying to score a massive piece of music. And don't get me wrong, everybody who's writing music, especially like the younger, new to writing, not necessarily younger, but the less experienced writers, everyone has this goal of, I want to be the next big name. I want to be the next person that the ISB are featuring in their concerts. I want these big pieces of music that everyone goes, wow. But for me, I would say that the best place to work right now, if you're new and if you're developing your trade, is to focus at the Unity series. There are bands all over the world that they are playing this 5 parts, and you will constantly get told by music editorial, by Andrew Blythe, by Ken Downey, by anybody else, that you need to really focus on getting your chords right and looking at how you harmonize. And writing something for Unity series enables you to look at that better, because you're only dealing with a few parts. You can see the errors easier. Whereas if you have 17 lines on your score, it's not so easy to spot the errors and spot the mistakes. So it's kind of like saying, when I get told to start at the piano and then from your piano score build out, I would say for composers that are just getting going, the Unity series is a fantastic place to get going, and it gives you such opportunities to write some great music which bands around the world are going to play. It's not about just trying to make a big name for yourself as the next staff band, New York staff band, name. Everyone's playing Unity at the minute. If it's YP bands, it's not all low ability bands. You get some very good bands that are just small in number. It's a perfect place to start.
We'll put 2 final questions to you. Number 1, favourite Salvation Army song, and do you have a favourite Bible text, scripture portion?
Yeah, favourite song is "In the Love of Jesus," the tune of Hammond.
Yes.
I think that song just gets me every single time. It has done since I first sung it as part of a mixed voice thing at a divisional music school years and years ago. Such beautiful words, and the melody is so nice. And so for me, that's my favourite. And as far as scripture goes, I will always go to Psalm 139, because it amazes me that no matter where I go, I've been so fortunate that I've been able to go to the States for like this Christmas caroling in Seattle, or since being with the Household Troops Band, I've traveled to America, Canada, into Europe. Wherever I go, I'm not alone. God is with me even there. It's such an amazing kind of promise. And so Psalm 139 will always be my first and my only really go-to text if people say, what's your favourite?
Right, I think our time is almost up, so I will say thank you for your time and for being the first willing victim in this session, chatting with the composers.
Wasn't so scary.
I'm glad about that. Most of the questions were submitted, so God bless you on your endeavours so far, and that He will use you in future.
Thank you very much.